Screw it. You know what? Leatherface is gay, actually. Yeah, and you know what? While we're at it, Sally is bisexual, Melody is on antidepressants, and Richter uses they them pronouns. I control what's reality now. Mia is God, and that's canon. The Yassification of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Well, it finally happened. They yassified the greatest horror movie in cinema history. And I can't tell if I love the beautiful chaos that the filmmakers created, or if I want to girlboss, gaslight, gatekeep myself from life. Okay, so let me set the scene. In the year of our Lord, 2022, a sequel to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre comes out on Netflix. You know, 48 years later. They had 48 years to do this right, plus 7 other films in between that, and yet it still feels like it was written by a poli-sci major in 4 hours. And yes, they yassified it. Girlboss. No spoiler warning, I'm about to save you good like 83 minutes of your life. You can thank me later. And by thank me later, I do mean subscribing to my Patreon. Go fuck yourself. Part 1, the Herstory of Texas Chainsaw. 48 years ago, Tobe Hooper created a masterpiece of visceral terror and violent psychological trauma. And then nearly half a century later, Netflix got its grubby little hands on it and made the weird amalgamation you see before you today. By the way, as much as I'm going to performatively dunk on this movie, I do love it in a weird way. So first things first, a bit of context. The original Texas Chainsaw like shocked the world when it came out. It's genuinely terrifying. Visceral terror throughout the entire thing. If you've seen it, you know what I mean. And of course, if you haven't seen it, please feel free to spam the word mid in the comment section below, and then provide an example of an alternative horror movie that is undoubtedly worse. I love horror movies. I love when cinema can have a strong effect on you, and horror does that better than any genre. However, I'm not really into the blockbuster stuff. Yes, I know, very not like other girls. I prefer my scares untouched by the MPAA. Greedy bastards. I haven't seen Friday the 13th or Poltergeist or The Nightmare on Elm Street, anything like that. I love me some good indie shit. The kind of low budget that makes you go, yo, did they really stab her? There's no way they have that much fake blood in the budget. This movie works precisely because of that reason. When this girl gets hung up on a human-sized meat hook, I think, oh, okay, the actress is dead now. Unadulterated terror is the key to maximizing an experience within this franchise, one that is both powerful and generates the most discourse. Where scary fails, terror is there to generate more social engagement, thus resulting in maximal revenue. Everything is a formula and God is dead. And for that very reason, I decided to spend an entire weekend dedicated to watching every single film in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. I was visiting my mother, who I haven't seen in months, and that's what I spent my time doing. It's all for you. This is a cry for help. I now have an encyclopedic knowledge of every single line of dialogue that transpired in one of these films over the last 50 years. And yes, I do hate myself. Okay, so after doing thorough research, I have concluded that this movie is just the 8th in a long line of terrible sequels and prequels and sequels to the prequels and prequels to the sequels that are remakes of the original, but it's also a prequel, and there's 3 different timelines. So honestly, it doesn't surprise me that this film turned out the way it did. A yasspilled woke takedown with hints of modern flair and copious amounts of synthetic blood. Kind of like all my videos, okay? Let's do this. In 1986, 12 years after the first movie, a sequel to the original came out called Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. It's the best of all the attempted sequels because it's terrible, but like in the best way possible. Then 4 years later, they made a third film, Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, and it's bad too. So they take another 5 years and they make, you guessed it, a 4th installment, Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation, and it's even worse than the previous. So they scrap that entire timeline. They say screw it and just settle on remaking the original with 2003's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but like with a different continuity. However, it does really well financially, so they say fuck it, let's prequel this shit, and we get Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning. And you know, it's bad again. So once again, they scrap the entire timeline and start yet another one with 2013's Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D, simultaneously placing the events of the original as the prequel to this movie, much like the original 1986 sequel. And then they come back 4 years later with 2017's Leatherface, which prequels the original. And not to be confused and or associated with the original timeline's third film, Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, which brings us back to the modern day's Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022, which is part of the original continuity and takes place years after the events of 1995's The Next Generation. Did I nail that shit or what? Part 2. Based Millennialcore. Okay, so that's great, Mia. You decided to waste your life compiling needless amounts of information about a subject, frankly, I don't care about. So just who the hell are these people, and how did they yassify Leatherface? Well, let me goddamn tell you. Okay, so like the premise of this movie is a bunch of millennials buy the entire town of Harlow, Texas. You know how it is when you're 25. They do this in order to sell the entire town to like a group of young influencers and entrepreneurs. I guess the goal is like some kind of liberal utopia. Avocado toast guzzling bastards. Am I giving the wrong impression? I find the core plot of this movie extremely unrealistic. Just how the hell do these 20-somethings have money? This is the goddamn United States. Why aren't they in crippling financial disarray? USA. USA. So the ringleader of this group is Dante. He seems to be the one in the group calling all the shots, and by calling all the shots, I mean getting shot with a knife. Melody is Dante's business partner. She's the co-creator of this investment dream. She's also tasked with acting as his moral compass when he's frustrated. You know, like when they both accidentally kill that old woman. So naturally, her job as a character is to be like, bro, I told told you we gotta stop killing old people. You know I don't like that. Then there's Melody's sister, and she is entirely unimportant to the plot until everyone else is dead and you're like, oh shit, I guess we're rooting for her now? Like, it kind of makes sense, but the filmmakers have really given me no reason to like this person as a character, besides the fact, of course, that she's played by Elsie Fisher. And of course, I'm gonna root for them and their Twitter account no matter what. Like, sure, her character was interesting, but honestly mostly annoying, but they were in that Bo Burnham movie, so I love her. Then finally, there's Ruth. What is there to say about Ruth? No, really, what do I say? I have nothing to say about Ruth. Look, they really did my girl Ruth wrong in this one. Her character plays the role of blonde bimbo, a role that I, of course, am well versed in, and let's just say, she nails the part. If I were in a horror movie, I'd be either the first one dead or the last one standing. There is no in between. Nuance is for losers and real people, neither of which I am. After Dante and Melody accidentally kill that old woman, she's like, guys, I have to go with her. I just had such a deep and emotional bond with this old woman, and oh look, it's her adopted son. I wonder if he becomes a major plot point later. So then Ruth bites it. She's dead. And that's it. Okay, so now here's an entire plot summary in under 2 minutes. You're welcome. That's patreon.com/miacole. Dollar Menu Scooby-Doo visit their new influencer town and subsequently accidentally kill an old woman by kicking her out of her home. And uh-oh, who's that in the corner? Wait, he's gone? That can't be good. Melody then decides that it's extremely important to find out whether or not they actually bought this old woman's house. Cause, you know, otherwise she died for nothing. 2 issues with that. Number 1, oh, now you give a shit about the property deed? Now that this bitch is dead and it doesn't matter anyway, now you care? I don't know if now is the time to get all high and mighty. But more importantly, is her death justified if you did have the lease? Like, her motives seem to be strictly moral on the surface. She won't rest until she finds that deed. But if she did find it, would they have just been like, cool, f that squatter, I guess, bye. Anyway, so she dies on her way to the hospital, and that gets that guy all freaked the f out, and so he lashes out, goes on a murderous rampage, kills a bunch of cops, as you do. Unfortunately, his initial streak of slashing happens to include Ruth, rest in power queen. And wait, he's taking her face off? Are you telling me that this guy is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre? The real Leatherface was the friends we made along the way. I don't know why I said that. I'm not putting that in. Oh, also coincidentally, these are the only 2 cops within like a 50-mile radius, you know. Naturally. Anyway, so all the way back home, they're still searching for the lease, and wait, how the fuck did he get there? So Dante's gone, and now 2 out of 4 of the main characters in the movie are already dead. And we still have 48 minutes left. Melody is now trapped in the house, and she spends like a good 15 minutes trying to escape, which is just enough time for Dante to come back to life again, and then, you know, subsequently die a few minutes later. Fucking loser. So with the help of her sister, she finally escapes the house, which unfortunately makes her lead Mr. Face to a group of very chainsawable influencers, to which he commits a mass murder. Do you guys understand our struggle yet? This scene is a metaphor for the pain and suffering done to us modern day influencers by the general public, quite literally masquerading under the face of a harmless woman who supports small business, yet is actually a serial killer whom wants to quite literally tear us down. Texas Chainsaw is a commentary on the plight of modern day influencers, and that's canon. Also, just to give credit where it's due, this scene is very beautifully shot. If I'm gonna watch a bunch of Instagram models get murdered, I at least want it to be in 4K. That's really it though, just because the last half hour of the movie is just Melody and what's-her-face trying to escape the Mr. Chainsaw Man, featuring Sally Hardesty of Texas Chainsaw Massacre fame, and also a giant pool of mystery water. Finally, at the end, they finally stop Leatherface via his receiving of multiple stab wounds, bullets through the upper abdomen, and a chainsaw uppercut. A chainsaw uppercut. But of course, somehow he survived just enough to kidnap Melody at the last second, cut her head off, and do his little chainsaw dance. Which unfortunately leaves Elsie Fisher as the last one standing in the movie, subsequently prompting them to complain about it on Twitter. I f***ing love Elsie Fisher, man. Part 3. Yassified, Murderous, Bluepilled, Slay, Yass, Go, Hunty, Mama, Slay, Oomph, Just Confess. Okay, so the yassification of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The shoehorning in of modern day topics and issues mixed in with half-baked commentary and lots of blood is what I believe makes the movie an experience. Okay, so I'm just gonna go through all the examples, except it gets progressively worse every time, and it's awful and I hate myself. First of all, the entire plot of the movie centers around, you know, 4 millennials single-handedly gentrifying an entire town. I think that's really funny. Gentrification is funny. Quote that. Clip it. Somehow these millennials acquired their wealth and somehow financed the acquisition of an entire f***ing town. A whole ass town. In the state of Texas of all places. I have no idea. But what I do know is gentrification seems to be the next hit thing and I really want to try it. Let me know. I'll make a 3 a.m. story time gone wrong Girlboss slay. Can we make this a trend? Can we make this a TikTok trend? Hashtag gentrification talks. The next hit thing. Hey yo, just caught me a small mining town deep in the heart of Oklahoma. This one is less egregious as it's at least relevant to the plot in some type of way. way. Like, it's the reasoning for this setting and this cast of characters, but it's still weird. Next, Confederate flag commentary. Fun. Okay, so there's this guy Richter, and we meet him at a convenience store before things get like bad. And as a character, I'm kind of unsure of how we're supposed to feel about him. Like, he's the authority figure, the masculine alpha Chad to Dante's beta male millennial aura. He's a real man that knows how to get his hands dirty. And he even gets a few epic woke takedown moments. Ah yes, social commentary through the eyes of a southern white man. Finally, the perspective society was yearning for. A lot of "you folks aren't from around here" type energy radiating from this man's undoubtedly calloused hands. But just as you start to view him as cool, this weird moment with Dante happens. Visually, it's actually a really emotionally charged shot. The image of a rugged white man angrily throwing what he believes to be a symbol of his culture in the face of a wealthy, well-off black man who just purchased this entire town. He purchased an entire town. How the f did he do that? Obviously, as a viewer, I'm more inclined to side with the guy who doesn't like the image of Confederate paraphernalia, but still. Next up is the scene that when I saw it, literally made me jump out of my chair and decide right there and then to make this video. I was perfectly content to keep writing my hour-long video essay that I've been working on for like months, but you know, now I'm here writing this shit show. That scene, ladies and gentlemen, and also not, is the prelude to the bus massacre. Right as Leatherface has thrust himself into the influencer bus, the BB loft, if you will, the apology mobile, if you feel so inclined. Incidentally, both of those words will be a slur within the next couple months. Anyway, the moment our guy walks onto the bus, so wait, sorry, I just thought of another one. The BS Cruiser. Unlike any other movie in the series, instead of being met with visceral terror, he's met with, you guessed it, a wall of simultaneously cell phone videos go up in unison, to which Leatherface responds by doing a crime. We get it, f***ing social commentary. Oh my god, everybody has phones and they like to videotape things. It's really crazy. Twitter is bad because what if they find out I do assaults? And this scene could not be done unless obviously that man in the front says those infamous words.
Try anything and you're canceled, bro.
The audacity, the presumption, moon brain idea. Imagine seeing this and being like, bro, I STG. If you HMU, I will TTYL in the DMs and QRT till you KYS. Congratulations, you're dead now. God, I love this movie. I haven't plugged my Patreon in a while. I should really do that. Cancel culture is now canon in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre universe. What a time to be alive. And finally, the weirdest and honestly most unnecessary shoehorning in of these modern day topics and ideas into this weird story is the flashbacks to the random school. Elsie Fisher's character was canonically involved in this incident. This is like supposed to be a really important part of the story in some way. I have a feeling they cut a lot of this. She's got like a scar and everything. It's a whole thing. I mean, the whole purpose of it is really just to build up to the point where she finally uses a gun for the first time to shoot Leatherface, but it's really not that interesting. This is supposed to be a Yassified Girlboss moment, and it's just not. Girlboss, Gaslight, NRA, Yasspilled, Pink Rifle, Women Support Women, and gun rights. Except from the start of the film, we already know she has a morbid fascination with them because of this event, so there's really no point to this climactic moment. Leaving it all just, it's bad. Everything's bad, it's all stupid, and I'm better than everybody. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 is a weird, conflicting piece of media. It sets out to tell a story of too many characters and details that really just can't be fit into its very short runtime. However, it's also just another film in a long line of subpar sequels and remakes and prequels and sequels to the prequels, and then subserted sequels and it's a f***ing mess digging through this filmography. I just and within this franchise, none of them will ever measure up to the terror that was created all those years ago. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is L plus ratio mid. Part 4, Leatherface was a hero for the underclass. I mean, think about it, he's a socialist icon. He kills rich millennials who gentrify cities and is an active advocate for affordable housing. He couldn't afford facial reconstructive surgery, so he decided to take matters into his own hands, learn basic doctor skills, and perform his own DIY facial transplant. This guy is basically a proletariat king.